Getting back on track with weight loss with alternate day fasting, let me tell you how I did it. So, we know with all weight loss journeys, whether it be with fasting or whatever you're doing to lose weight, life gets in the way. Somehow, something disrupts that progress. So, I'm going to be sharing with you how I got back on track with my alternate day fasting, what my current protocol is, what my previous protocol was. So let's go ahead and get into it. I was really locked in with my fasting from middle of June of 2024 to October 26th. And I remember the day. So that tells you something about how locked in I was. So over the course of those 4 months or so, I experienced probably 30 or so pounds, maybe a little bit more in terms of weight loss. But I was just feeling amazing at that point. Now, my fasting protocol was fasting 36 to 40 hours, Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays. So I was doing alternate day fasting within the work week. And that worked well for me, really well. I'm going to give you a little bit of information about how that differs for my current protocol and what I think of the pros and the cons are. So, come November and the holidays, things were not as consistent, especially November. I probably was hitting 2 fasting days per week, just about enough for me to not gain too much. Then, no, then December, I actually did true alternate day fasting for a period of 3 weeks in December. And then once the Christmas holiday came, there was some other family stuff that ended up happening. And then I got sick. So I would say from the end of December and until March, actually, restarted where I was consistent March 1st. So I got off track in some big ways there for a long period of time. I will say I was able to maintain for a little while by just fasting 2 days a week. And I did a lot of flexible dieting. So I wasn't like honed in on my diet. So I was able to maintain for a little while just by keeping up with 2 days of fasting. But then once I got sick, that even went away. But I was always doing at least a minimum of 1 day. That just wasn't enough to maintain progress I had made. Getting back on track was a challenge within itself because a huge part of this is a mental game. And when you fall off and you see those pounds come back on, it's really discouraging. So I was a bit discouraged because I seen some of the weight come back on, not all of it. And then you have to build back up your fasting muscle. So again, that's also mindset stuff too. Prior to March, in February, throughout February, I was just making the plan of what I was going to do to get back on track. And so what I had decided was I was going to go back to doing alternative fasting, but I was going to do true ADF, like true ADF, not just doing Monday, Wednesday, Friday fasting. I'm doing true ADF where I fast 36 to 40 hours, and that's every other day I'm going into a fast. I really want to see, will I get better results doing it this way? So that's a part of what I'm doing. I also, like I've done previously, I primarily eating low carb. So I prioritize protein and vegetables for my meals. And then some other stuff ends up seeping in. So I do some flexible eating. And with longer fasts, you can eat a bit more flexibly and still see the results. So that's also what I've done over the last month to get back on track. So every other day fasting, true ADF. I'm eating low carb, but there's some flexibility in there. Also, as far as my activity, I never stop actually doing activity every day, even during the time period where I got off track. I was at least walking for like 30 minutes a day. So I've kept that up. But then I went to making sure I was walking a minimum of 2 miles per day, which takes me around 40 minutes. And then I actually bumped up my activity, and I'll talk a little bit about that. So, what I want to do in terms of this video is go kind of week by week doing this true ADF, what my experience has been. So, first week, when I got back on track, I had done some planning already in February. And again, I was still fasting 1 or 2 days a week. So now I was just going into where I knew that I was going to be consistent the entire month. I had counted out each of when my fast days were going to be. I also already have a protocol in place when it comes to what I do on fasting days. So I make sure that I have my water, I have my electrolytes that I put in my water. So I already have that going on fasting days. I also drink tea. I drink yerba mate tea. That's something I do on a fast day. Of course, no sweeteners, no sugar. I also use pink Himalayan sea salt on my fasting days. Have a little bit of that. And in the evenings, I have lemon balm tea, and I put some pink Himalayan sea salt in my lemon balm tea as well. So that's what a fasting day looks like for me. And I should add, I'm about 4 to 6 ounces of coffee in the morning prior to walking. That's what a fasting looks like for me, which it is just um, water, electrolytes, pink Himalayan sea salt, coffee, and tea. That's my fasting day. So, first week, it went pretty well. I was like, okay, I got this. So, the first week went pretty well. I was doing walking 2 miles every day. I also wanted to commit to doing a bit more than 30 minutes. 30 minutes was just baseline to make sure that I moved my body. So that went, excellent the first week. Not much, it wasn't much to report. Second week, first week went so well. Second week, I'm like, well, I'm gonna bump up my walking. So I'm going to make sure I do 60 minutes of walking in the morning. And so I would get to around 3 miles or a little bit under 3 miles. And I'm gonna do like 15,000 steps a day. So second week is going pretty well. I bumped up my activity, and actually I was getting almost about probably 18,000 steps a day. And I end up pulling back on that the third week. I'll talk a little bit about that. I do want to mention that I was being very intentional about breaking my fast because a couple times my stomach had got a bit upset. And that's something that's not new to me. So I did make sure that I went back to breaking my fast. There's a couple ways I break my fast. One is I do have this protein, this isopure protein when I break my fast. I make my protein shake with like a scoop and a half of the protein mix, and then I put in around a cup of almond milk, and I put in a little bit of cold brew coffee, maybe around 2 to 3 ounces. So I break my fast with that. But as it even came to my digestive system and incorporating solid food, I made sure that I was a little bit more intentional with that. Had steamed vegetables and a little bit of chicken broth. And then I will wait for about 30 minutes until I actually had solid food. So that may be one of the differences in how I was breaking my fast this time around and doing the every other day fast. First week, pretty good, just making sure I was intentional about how I broke my fast. Second week, pretty good. And actually, I didn't have to be as watchful about how I broke my fast, but as I was getting used to it in the second week, I was able to bump up my activity. Third week goes pretty well. I did make sure I took my activity down to about 15,000 steps. 18,000 steps was great, but here's what I want to make sure that I didn't do so much activity that would impact or trigger my appetite. That is why I brought my step count down to around that 15. I know a lot of people say that they can walk and it doesn't trigger their appetite. I just wanted to make sure because doing the every other day fasting was one of my priority goals for the month. Fourth week, oh gosh. So I'm gonna take a little bit of time here to talk about this fourth week of fasting because this is what I think could be more helpful for people as they are getting back onto a journey or if you're starting your fasting journey. I think that I was hit not only with keto flu, but being a woman, this was a hormonal time for me. And it was super challenging to keep my fasting up. I just, with the keto flu, whatever was happening hormonally, I had no energy. I still did my fast. I was taking my electrolytes. I even bumped up my electrolytes. I had to call off of work a couple of days. This is how bad I felt. The final week, full week of April. On my eat days, I did have a little bit of some of the things like this is where the flexibility came in. I incorporated some things I would have not normally incorporated, just things I wanted because it was like I feel bad. Maybe if I bump up what I'm eating a little bit, that may be helpful. So I did still prioritize protein, lean protein and veggies. But then like one day I had a handful of like tortilla chips. And so that was more head hunger. It wasn't even hunger. It was more satisfying a craving than, a nutritional something that I needed to add. As far as nutritionally, I was just focused on adding electrolytes. So, um, that 4th week, if I had going into April, if I experienced anything, in terms of what I experienced in March, I may break a fast. I'm not sure. I might have to manage it differently. So, this is where I'm gonna compare and contrast a little bit of the Monday, Wednesday, Friday fasting versus the true ADF. It did it get results? I got excellent results, and if I can put up some pictures, I will at the end of this video. Also, if I can put some pictures up of to show you some of the things I'm eating, I'll do that as well. Again, I'm prioritizing lean protein, so it's mainly like chicken and ground turkey. That's really my staples every week. Green beans is one of my staples every week. And so that's pretty much on the food. If I can like put up some before and after pictures, put some pictures of what I'm eating, I'll do that. But let me hone in into doing true ADF versus Monday, Wednesday, Friday fasting. You get results with both. You get results with both. And my results a little bit more accelerated with true ADF. They might be, but I'm gonna need another month or two of doing this to tell. I don't know if I will last another month or two. N Not because it's so much harder than doing the Monday, Wednesday, Friday fast. It's just like maybe the Monday, Wednesday, Friday fasting was a sweet spot for me, and I really enjoyed that for so many reasons. One is each fast day. You know when you're fasting, it's just a set schedule. I love the set schedule of it. I work outside of the home during the week. I love that most of my time working outside of the home is one of my fasts are. And then I don't eat when I meal prep, I'm only meal prepping for 2 days. I like that part of it. The days where I have to meal prep for 3 days, on those weeks where my fast days are Tuesday, Wednesday, and my eat days are Monday, Wednesday, Friday. I mean, it's only one additional day, not the biggest hassle, but I just prefer where it was 2 days. I knew what those 2 days would be. And I liked having the weekends where those were my eat days because I felt like it lent the opportunity to be more social. It also was didn't have to prep as much food. I could have the food that I wanted to make on the weekend. My pros and cons were that I like just the schedule of the Monday, Wednesday, Friday routine. The true ADF, I am still in the adjustment phase for that. And that is where I'm going to sum it all up is that getting back on track, yes, has been difficult, but it's been so much doable because I planned for it. I had a routine already in place, and so I'm really leaning on that routine, and the electrolytes are really helpful to make sure that I'm making it through my fast days. And I think there's just more intentionality that I have to have if keto flu does arise again. And then those times where it is that time of the month, being super intentional around that. I know some people choose not to fast. I'm trying to make it through those time periods. And when I was doing Monday, Wednesday, Friday, it was just a little easier to make it through those time periods. So that's it in terms of getting back on track, you guys. If you want more support around weight loss, please join my Facebook group. It is for women who are overwhelmed and overweight. So you can click that link in order to join my Facebook group. Also, there's a free guide on some things that you could do to start your weight loss journey. And I do have a webinar coming up. So I'll put that link so that you can access if you want to register for that webinar. And the webinar is all around supporting women who are overwhelmed and overweight and helping them to understand what they need to do to reduce stress in order to accelerate their weight loss. So I hope that this video is helpful and I'll see you in the next one. I was able to add some pictures and videos. So this is the protein shake that I usually have on my eat days. And this is some green beans, roasted green beans, and chicken sausage. I usually have the green beans with chicken thighs, but I've been adding this chicken sausage to the rotation, and it has some pretty clean ingredients. Next is the chicken thighs that I usually have, and I paired that with coleslaw, and it's topped with low carb barbecue sauce, and a little bit of cheese. And next, this is a sub in the tub concept salad, and that has deli based turkey lunch meat and provolone cheese. These are some snacks that I've packed. And I usually have the cashews on each eat day. However, the other snacks, as far as the bar and the crackers, I don't always have those. I just pack them because I would prefer to have something that I packed rather than eating something I didn't plan for. Here are progress pics from the end of February and the end of March.